Nicole, take it away.
Okay, hi. My name is Nicole Hoffman. I'm giving a presentation titled Attack on C-Suite Cheat Codes. And the presentation is focusing on presenting the idea of a MITRE ATT&CK implementation plan to an executive C-suite or board members, management, really anyone that you're pitching the idea to implement this plan. I'm hoping that this presentation will also be beneficial for other types of projects or new ideas that you want to present to your C-suite or management. So a little bit more about me. I'm currently a threat research analyst at Shadowscape. We are an intelligence-driven cyber security analytics and operations company. We offer managed services. We have a large amount of training available. I've been in the field for approximately 3 years. I'm a self-proclaimed analytics nerd. I love threat research and APT research, and I'm passionate about threat hunting. I am 4 courses away from achieving my bachelor's in information technology, which I'm very excited about. I just passed the Security Plus exam, so my first certification. I really enjoy competing in CTF events, specifically when I get the chance to hack web applications. When I'm not working, I'm typically hanging out with my kids, watching movies, playing board games, and I am a massive Marvel, DC, Harry Potter fan. I can't choose between the 2, Marvel and DC. I just love them both, as you can see. So getting into the agenda, I did pick a video game theme just to make it a little funner. We are going to be going on a journey. We're going to be going into an introduction and talking about some of the challenges that I have personally faced and I have heard other people face and why I chose this topic. And then I'm going to introduce the topic of attack and what it is and how it can benefit your organization. I am not going to get super technical in this talk. I want to focus more on the communication with C-suite. So I'm going to try as hard as I can not to get super technical. I'm going to talk about how you can prepare for a meeting with executive staff, and things you can do before you start researching, things that you'll need, things that they'll ask. Then I'm going to be discussing the 3 R's that executives really care about, which are risk, regulation, and revenue, and discussing how you can apply those to the attack framework and how they can benefit the organization. And then we're going to be stopping off at educate and empower REEF to go ahead and go over how you can, just like it sounds, educate and empower your C-suite as well as your staff members about the attack framework. And then we're going to do a recap at Conclusion Cove. So we got a lot of content to go over, so I'm just going to hop right in. Hopefully I don't talk too fast, but I want to make sure I get everything in on time. So I've wanted to talk about the attack framework in a conference talk for a long time, ever since I first wanted to speak at a conference, but I wasn't sure where to go or what specifically to talk to. I'm so passionate about the attack framework that I was concerned that it would just be like, oh, look at my fancy toy. So I started researching on Twitter and reaching out to people like, what would they like to hear about? What would be the most beneficial? And a lot of people said that they needed help with the implementation of attack, but not so much for the technical strategy of implementation, but the communication with C-suite or management and getting them on board. So that's why I decided to choose this topic and try to bridge the gap between the technical cybersecurity individuals and the executive suite or board members or any member of management. So one of the major things I want to note before we get into it is that executives and C-suite, all of these individuals, they're just people. They're not, monsters or reapers. They're not ATMs. They are not money bags. They are people, and they should be treated as such. If you go into any conversation with executives and treating them, just like they're an ATM or without purpose or goals, it's not going to go well. So definitely treat them like people. And another thing I want to make sure you understand is that it's as you get more technical in your career, at least for me, it becomes harder for me to bridge the gap technically and explain things in a non-technical way and not use acronyms. And it's something that we really, as an InfoSec community, just have to work on. We're just going to have to continuously work on that communication so that we can educate and empower our C-suite and staff so that we don't lose that, because you don't want them to, glaze their eyes over within 5 minutes of your conversation. It's just not going to go well, and they may not get anything actionable out of it. So if you haven't heard of the ATT&CK framework, it comes from MITRE. MITRE ATT&CK is a globally accessible, freely available knowledge base of adversary techniques, tactics, and procedures. It can be seen as a number of different frameworks, a threat framework, a risk framework. There's a lot of different types of strategies for you to implement. I'm not going to be going into that in this talk. It's kind of outside of the scope, but I might do a follow-up white paper or another talk and really dive deep into the technical implementation and the different strategies that you can take, such as going technique by technique or really focusing on things that are vital to your threat environment or your specific industry. But the main goal to know about ATT&CK, if you're trying to implement it into your organization to enhance your cybersecurity posture, is seeing how well your organization can defend against and detect all of the techniques within the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So moving into Preparation Island, some cheat codes that we can go over. When you prepare to talk to executives, it's really important for you to understand what the strategic goals of the organization are and what the business drivers are. It's going to be different for every organization. It could be profitability is really important, reducing unnecessary costs, increasing customer service, all of these things. You have to be able to do the research and understand what they are. The reason you have to do that is because in order to get the C-suite to listen to your new ideas, and in order for to get them excited about your new idea or tool or plan, you want to try to structure your goals to align with their goals. So if they want to cut out unnecessary costs, you want to figure out how your tool can do that. And if you align your presentation to help their goals, I think that they'll be more willing to help. And it also will show them that you care and that you've been paying attention and listening. If you hear your manager say all the time at meetings, hey, we really need to cut costs. If you come into a presentation and you let them know, like, hey, I've been listening, they're really going to appreciate that. So prepare so they know that you care. So moving into the 3 R's, the risk, revenue, and regulation, we're going into revenue stream, some cheat codes that you can take with you. When I talk about revenue, what I really mean is just money. Money going in, money going out, money being spent. There is a preconceived notion with a lot of C-suite executives and management that cybersecurity is just a money hole or a money pit, and we really want to let them know that that's not the case. And the way that we do that, especially if we're going to be asking them for, to get on board with implementing a new project or plan, such as the ATT&CK framework, we want to show them that we care about where the money is being spent and if it's being spent in the right way. So one of the things that I would recommend getting familiar with is return on investment, and specifically return on a security investment, because it's a little bit different than calculating other types of business return on investments, or ROIs. You have to be able to calculate your annual loss expectancy, and I placed a equation there for you, which basically states that the way that you calculate it is a single loss expectancy, which is SLE, which is the cost of a single incident, such as, one system going down. Every time it happens, it costs about $10,000. The ARO is the amount of times it historically happens, the annual rate of occurrence. So you multiply those two together, it's about, the cost is for one single loss is about 10,000. This is just an example. Happens about 5 times a year. So the annualized loss expectancy is 50,000. And to calculate the return on investment, there's a couple different ways you can do it. I would recommend researching and finding out what works best for you and your organization, because you can just take the cost, the cost of implementation, the cost of a tool, and determine if it really lowered the annual rate of occurrence, if it lowered the amount of times it happened. And you really have to start calculating impact. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. You can not only calculate costs, but also brand reputation can be affected by an incident, or customer service can go down, or all of those things can be affected. So I highly recommend getting familiar with how to calculate return on investment for cybersecurity products. And where the attack framework comes in is, depending on the strategy that you choose to implement the attack framework, whether you go technique by technique, or if you have the resources to do, a bigger haul of techniques, it's going to force you to get really comfortable and really familiar with your network and infrastructure, and you'll be able to determine if the tools that you have are actually doing the job that they're supposed to be doing. Are they actually detecting what they say they're detecting? And you'll be able to take it a step further and perform those return on investment reports for your executive team, to be able to allow them to know that the money that is getting invested in these security products are worth it, and that you care about where money is being spent. Because if you act as though you don't care, they're going to continuously assume that cybersecurity is a money pit, and we don't want them to do that. We want them to be on board. We need them to see the vision and see the value, because it's only going to make the process of implementation easier and smoother. So moving into Risk Mountain, some cheat codes. Just like calculating return on investments, I highly recommend you to determine how to calculate risk specifically to cybersecurity events. And when I was taking a cyber risk class in college, I saw a cyber risk matrix, or a risk matrix similar to the one in the corner of the screen. And I could not figure it out. I was extremely confused. I kind of just guessed my way through, and it wasn't until I was at my current organization at Shadowscape, and that we were talking about the diamond model of intrusion analysis, and we're putting it in our course, and really discussing something that no one else had told me, which I want to share with you. To be able to determine, the likelihood that someone's going to attack you, the issue that I faced was, how am I going to determine if, Joe Schmo down the street is going to attack me versus, the business next door? I don't know how I would determine their likelihood. And the thing that a lot of people didn't tell me, specifically in my cyber risk course, was you have to assume that you're already being targeted to be able to calculate risk intelligently. So the way that you calculate it is you have to assume someone already has a vendetta against you. A hacktivist is out to get you because they disagree with your, political stances or anything like that. You have to assume you're already being targeted. You know, what is the likelihood, let's say, that your website is going to be defaced? Do you have mitigations put into place to prevent that? If you don't, the likelihood is greater. And then obviously determining impact, like we talked about earlier, there's a lot of different factors with cybersecurity impact that you really have to talk about within your organization and how you want to calculate it. But it could be loss of customer service, could be brand reputation, and obviously the cost of an incident. So lowering the likelihood of attack lowers your risk level. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So I kind of wanted to share that aha moment with you guys, because that's something that I learned while working at Shadowscape, while putting together our training. So some of the cheat codes, now that you kind of understand how to calculate risk for cybersecurity occurrences, I would suggest going into a deeper dive into that and educating yourself so that you can then educate and empower your C-suite or management on how you calculate risk and how the mitigations that you put in place based on the risks that you identify with the attack matrix will help you. I just lost my place. You want to empower them with the, you'll be able to identify risks as you go through the attack implementation. And once you're able to identify the risk, you can identify and calculate the risk level, you can mitigate them, and then you can allow your C-suite to make informed decisions based on that risk. And you won't be giving them a false sense of security. You'll be actually able to give them a more substantial, solid numbers based on your analysis during your assessment. And another thing that the attack framework allows you to do, like I said earlier, is it allows you to actually focus on industry-specific threats or threats that are specific to your environment, whether it be Windows, Linux, and you can allow them to know that you're be able to identify those types of risks, because executives care a lot about risk and how to mitigate risk. Whether it's cybersecurity or business, it's still risk, and they'll understand mitigations to lower the risk levels. And for this, I would suggest, so that they could see it, I would suggest doing a proof of concept with maybe 1 or 2 techniques. You map your coverage and determine your risk level, show them how you can calculate that risk, and show them lessons learned during that process of your proof of concept, so that you can, if you say, let's say something didn't work, or you saw something could work better, then you can go ahead and put that in your implementation plan and say, moving forward, if we're going to be doing it this way, these are the things I think would work better based on this proof of concept. And those are some real numbers that they would really appreciate, so they know kind of what they're getting into and how they want to attack it, or what strategy they would like to take. So moving into regulation, I don't know how many times I have heard, well, we passed the audit, so we're good. Unfortunately, it's not always the case. What a lot of people don't understand is that compliance audits are like a screenshot of your security controls in a single moment in time. And a lot of times you prepare for those, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your cybersecurity posture is really good if you pass an audit. So cybersecurity, a well thought out cybersecurity program should pave the way for compliance. It shouldn't be the other way around. Compliance does not lead to security. If you have the available resources and time and effort to be able to have an audit and compliance department that's separate from the information security department, though that staff will really appreciate the fact that you have a well thought out security program instead of just trying to focus on, well, let's just implement all of these compliance regulations because then we'll be good. Because if they know what, they are great recommendations, but they're not necessarily a full thought out program that you can continuously improve and maintain. And the ATT&CK framework allows you a strategy and a methodology, and it kind of works as like a unified taxonomy that you can use with your department. You can show the C-suite executives, audit and compliance. It allows a lot of transparency for you to be able to explain exactly where your defenses are, where your gaps are, and you really just want to educate the executive staff members and let them know that you really want to improve your cybersecurity program, and that will then improve your compliance and the road to compliance or any roadmaps that you have. It'll help with that. And you'll actually notice if you do some research that a lot of companies are incorporating ATT&CK, encouraging ATT&CK. So it'll be beneficial, and it won't be something that's completely new to the cybersecurity world. A lot of people are adopting the framework. So you'll find a lot of useful information. So moving into educate and empower REEF, one of the biggest things that I found over the last 3 years in information security is what to do and what not to do as far as communicating with executives and especially staff members. When either you're giving a training presentation or if you're discussing a pitch for a new idea or asking for a new tool, any type of communication where you really want to stress the importance of the value of it and how it's going to help, you feel the need to use cybersecurity statistics or stories about breaches and the impact that companies faced. And that's great, but you have to keep in mind that you don't want to go in trying to instill fear, because fear and intimidation are not going to get them on board like you need them to get them on board. Remember, we don't want the executives to think that cybersecurity is, something to be feared. It's just a money pit. You want to educate them, empower them with information so that they can start making it a part of company culture. If it's something that everyone's afraid of, then that's not going to happen. And if you want it to be a part of company culture, it's only going to make our lives as cybersecurity professionals easier. You have to get the C-suite and management on board because it just trickles down from there. So don't allow the conversation to be fear-driven. Don't allow yourself to scare them. You could still use those types of statistics. You can talk about business statistics. You could talk about how someone, a competitor in the same industry, they faced a type of attack that you think that you might be, that might affect you. You could talk about how they dealt with it, how you want to prevent that. Just try not to instill fear. Try not to scare people, especially when it comes to reporting. If people are always afraid of cybersecurity, they're not going to tell you when something's wrong, and you want them to have that open line of communication. And most executives, if you come prepared with this conversation and you're trying to speak their language, which is business, and you're trying to make an effort, you've done your research, a lot of them, like I said, are just people and are willing to take the time because you've taken all this time to prepare, and they're willing to be educated. And don't just assume that they know everything that you're presenting. If they do, that's great. You can, discuss, hey, have you heard about this before? If not, feel free to educate, empower them with information. Don't assume that they're going to be offended or anything like that. So you really want to empower them with a real sense of security, not a false sense of security, not we passed the audit. This is really going to benefit them getting on board, and they'll really appreciate you taking the ownership in the meeting and showing that you want to help, that you care, that you've been listening, and that you don't want them fearing anyone. You care about where their money is spent. You care about their time. This is all very useful information. So once again, I can't stress this enough. Do not instill fear into your C-suites when you're discussing an ATT&CK implementation. So just to recap, what some of the things that we talked about: identify what your business goals are, your strategic goals, identify what the agenda is for your executives or your management, try to align your goals, make the connection with your implementation and see how can it benefit the goals of the company. Because every cybersecurity decision, every cybersecurity tool should have a business driver behind it. It should be specific. It shouldn't be questionable. You should be able to know, like, this is a well thought out logical reason why we have this. We have this web application firewall because we need our website up, and we identified this flaw. So these are all things that you need to be able to do. And educate yourself on how to calculate return on investment, annual loss expectancy, single loss expectancy. These are hard numbers that executives like to see. They want to know the cost. They want to know how is it going to reduce cost? Is it worth it? And specifically for the ATT&CK framework, as you go through techniques and as you test your tools, and you'll be able to determine if they are indeed worth what you're paying for them. And you want to be able to show them, once again, that cybersecurity is not a money pit. It is something that they should be investing in. It should be a business driver in itself that is required for operations. And it's okay to be to use statistics, remember, but don't instill fear. And when you're calculating cyber risk, I would use a lot of visuals so that they know. Do a proof of concept. They get an idea of what they're getting into when you start doing it on a larger scale, depending on your time and resources, depending on your strategies. All really good information. And I would recommend putting all of this in an implementation plan and having it for them ready when you have that conversation. I would choose the channel of just a face-to-face communication if you can. Obviously, during the current pandemic, if you have to do it over Zoom, that's fine. You can definitely do it that way or in a presentation form, but definitely have that report for them so that they can see the hard numbers and see that the work that you put into it. So I'm going to make my slides available after the talk, but I wanted to share these are just all of the cheat codes that I went over and a lot of the resources that I used. Most of the methodologies that I talked about, I really learned at my current organization, Shadowscape. It really is a lot of our methodologies align with these. It's where I really learned a lot of the, how to bridge that communication, how to utilize ATT&CK on a strategic level instead of, just focusing on the technical jargon. If you're interested in learning more information, I did put our website down at the bottom. We do have a intelligence-driven cyber security analytics and operations course where we discuss a lot of this information in more detail. So if you are interested, definitely go to our website. I'm going to make the slides available on our website. I'll go ahead and share it on Discord right after I put it on there, and as well as a few other resources so you can see our course and what that's more about if you want to have more information. In addition, I'm going to be releasing a white paper discussing everything that I talked about in more detail, going over a little bit more technical stuff as far as the attack implementation, but still kind of high level so that it can be beneficial to an executive or security conscious manager. But look for that. I'll go ahead and share that on Twitter once it gets available. So I hope you like my presentation. I hope it was beneficial to everyone. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen. I was worried I wouldn't get through it too fast, so sorry if I stumbled or talked a little bit fast for my own good.
That was awesome, Nicole.
Thank you.
And this is your second time presenting at GRIMMCon. You said this is your second time presenting ever?
No, so the attack or the the presentation that I created for GRIMMCon, I gave at FajitaCon and All the Talks Con.
Nice.
But this is the first time presenting this talk.
Awesome. So was this driven by any specific experiences that you might be able to talk about or give us some kind of example from?
Well, like I said at the beginning of the talk, the main reason why I chose this specific topic is because I've had, over the last few months, I've had a few people reach out to me and ask me how specifically they can implement attack, how can they get management on board, and these align, with the methodologies that we have at Shadowscape. So it was just I had the knowledge and the ability to share, and I thought it would be a really helpful talk instead of just focusing on a really technical implementation of attack, which I would love to do. Maybe I'll do in the future, but I thought that there isn't enough talks about communication, specifically information security. I feel like it was super easy for me when I first started, when I was more of a noob, but now that as I increase my technical knowledge, it becomes harder to not overly technicalize things. Because technicalize is the word.
Yeah, yeah. If former presidents can make up words, why can't you?
Yeah, of course.
No, it's great. I agree completely. We see this often. We see this in a number of our engagements, and we've heard from many in the community that it seems to be the not so misunderstood elephant in the room that we often have problems communicating in this industry. And I know there's been people have worked on it for years, and yet it remains a challenge for many in the industry. And then, like you said, the more technical you get in a specific area, the more difficult it becomes to try to translate those things and get the key points that you actually want to get across, right? I like to think of it like the dominant characteristic of what you're trying to accomplish. That's really what you have to focus on, and sometimes that's hard, especially when you went from doing something really technical to then talking to like a C-suite or a board, and that can definitely be difficult.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we have to continuously improve upon, just like our technical skills. We have to continuously improve our communication skills as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So often we're trying to speak to a crowd, but we need to know our audience, and what you've done in this presentation is given a really good, like some down in the weeds level details of how to get to know your audience. I appreciate that. Brian gave me permission to like snap in and out like I dream of dreams. Wiggle your nose once in a while and boom.
Yeah, you got it, Matt. Hey, we do have one question that popped up, and then I think you're going to be taking questions afterwards in Discord, correct?
Yes.
Perfect. Matt, you can just stay on. You don't have to keep popping in and out. So the comment is this: there's a lack of security conscious people in upper management where I work. what would be a good first step to make them more aware of the real risk of a cyber attack?
I think you really have to judge your audience. And you really want to maybe, sometimes if they're not security conscious, it's because they may have that fear. Fear of, obviously, they, anyone that's ever had clicked on a phishing link accidentally, whether it be a staff member, they have that level of fear. And then they also have the level of fear of like, they may not know what you're talking about most of the time. And so they may not be the ones willing to, bridge that gap. And I think it's really not their job. I think it's important for executives to be security conscious, but I think it's ultimately up to us to be able to communicate our, technical goals and our strategic goals to align with them and bridge that gap and educate and empower them and ensure that they're not afraid, because it might be a fear thing. You just really have to communicate, and a lot of them are open to communication.
Absolutely. So there's a number of other posts in the questions section. They're not really questions. There's just quite a few people saying, excellent presentation, totally apt topic, love the slides. Looks like a lot of people would really like to get their hands on your slides later. We have one that's yay, awesome presentation, awesome job. So yeah, everyone seems seems to very much like the presentation. I certainly did. And some of the comments are right. I mean, this is a very applicable and germane topic to our industry that never seems to go away. And as the technical path changes for a number of the different technologies we're concerned about, in corporate organizations, that you kind of you end up right back out here because you have a new way that you need to talk about something. Have you seen situations where technology, the path of technology changes, and you end up in in an area where you might have been able to talk with a board and got them security conscious, something new pops up, and then you have to find a new way to explain the risk?
Not necessarily for me, but I know in recent history, as far as adversaries, I know when the Maze ransomware gang started, building websites and placing, their victims to, either they didn't pay or they're trying to, pressure them into paying. That really changed the game for ransomware. It's no longer, just a cybersecurity attack. It's now a data breach, because you really don't know if they're stealing your information. And that, I think, really opened up the door for a lot of communication, because it just increased, the level of risk for data breaches. It's no longer, other things. It's, it's a malware that, can affect it. And I think that allowed at least a lot of people that I know. I've had a couple of my friends who own businesses reach out to me and say like, hey, is this thing real? and and educate them, because a lot of times they aren't aware of like data reporting laws and the things that go into an incident, more than just the time and cost, legal costs and things like that. So I think that specific event really changed the tides for cybersecurity, talking to executives.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for the second time. And I don't know if you heard earlier, but GRIMMCon 0x2 is going to be December 30th this year. So maybe we can convince you to come back again.